Now, what is going on, everybody, and welcome back to another video on the channel. Now, I know you thought you could escape the holiday robe, but there is no escaping the holiday robe, okay? Now, today we're going to be talking about Solana and what its price is doing from a macro sense, right? We've been talking about some of the intricates, we've been talking about some of the micros recently, but I want to give you just another update on what the macro is looking like and why there is a possibility that Solana could be opening up doors for it to go towards $669. Now, I know that sounds like a reach, but when I explain it, I think you'll get it. So with that said, let's not waste any more time and let's get straight into today's video. So, looking at Solana here, what we can see is that it is still in the party pooper zone. You guys know we've been covering Solana 2 to 3 times every single week for the last 2 years when everybody else abandoned it. And so that we have an understanding that this zone right here has a strong tendency in Solana's chart price to history to reject the price of the downside, right? It's just a commonality. Now, what I have told you guys is that when bull markets start, especially for Solana, when it goes into these giga cycles, it doesn't give a shit about history. It doesn't give a shit about patterns. It doesn't care anything about technicals or fundamentals. The thing sometimes just sends it, right? But what we have to understand is that this is by a far the most important zone in terms of liquidity, in terms of resistance and support on Solana's chart price history. The zone between $68 and $123 represents the 618 to 786 Fibonacci retracement zone between the all-time high to our macro low from January of 2023. And the 618 to 786 bucks, as I mentioned before, is the strongest retracement level that a chart has in general. And then when you mix in the fact that this is an all-time bull market high to bear market low, it even shows even more strength. But what you can see is Solana doesn't care, because Solana doesn't give a fuck sometimes. And now Solana is currently sitting around $110, now going to seemingly want to test the top side of the party pooper zone. Now, I do believe that this is a moment in which we need to be careful and cautious, right? Just like right here, it was valid. Be a little bit careful right now, a little bit cautious. Yeah, it might just send it. It might melt up through here and then send it straight up, because that does happen sometimes, right? We've seen that before, right? We'll kind of melt up and then send it straight up. But there's often even more times in which you will get rejections off of levels like these or rejections off of levels like these. And so when you're approaching the 618 box, got to be a little careful. When you're approaching the 786 box, you got to be a little bit careful, okay? And so at this given point, what I'm saying is, look, obviously, if Solana's price can keep sending it, what we're looking for is the break of 123. This bad boy breaks 123. It's now cleared one of the most difficult levels of resistance to clear on its chart price ever. I mean, ever. Okay. Now, what does that mean? Okay. Let's say hypotheticals. Let's just go into some hypotheticals here, right? Because I can't predict the future. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't have a crystal ball, right? But let's say it does clear the 786 zone at $123. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean it's just going to straight send it straight up, right? That's not how that works, okay? But what it does mean is that it's opened this door. Right now, this is an absolutely closed shut, 3 locks and a little bit of a deadbolt on it door, okay? But if Solana's capable of breaking 123 and just getting above it for at least a couple days, maybe even a couple hours, it says that we are in a situation in which it can now open this door and it now can continue to the top side. Now, historically, looking at Solana, as I mentioned before, for so long, we know that when Solana is capable of breaking a 786 level, 2 things happen oftentimes. Oftentimes, number one, it is, even if it pulls back, right? Even if it pulls back to try to establish some support, maybe it has to come back to retest the 20 simple moving average like it always usually does, right? You can see here, like there's all these moments where we will generally come back to retest the 20 simple moving average. Say maybe we send it straight up, then we break it, we stay above it a little bit, and then we come back for this moving average, right? Say something like that happens, the door is now open for it to come back to retest its all-time high. That is just what Solana almost always does. I have seen very minimal times in which it breaks the 786 zone and either doesn't go straight up towards that all-time high or that previous high in which established this range, or back test established support and then work its way back up. It almost never happens in a way in which it breaks the 786 level, then it just starts trending back downwards. That's not usually how this works. Now, I'm a man that understands that things just happen sometimes that we can't explain, can't understand, but that's just not usually what happens. I have no reason to believe that's what's going to happen, okay? Not with a halving coming up in about 4 or 5 months, okay? For Bitcoin, of course. Now, following that, obviously, the next thing to consider is that if Solana, I told you guys 2 things usually happens. Door number 1, or option number 1, is that we open up the door to the all-time high. But how often is it that we see in macro uptrends that we just set a macro double top and we just continue back down? Not really all that often, right? We didn't set a macro high and come back here, right? I would say the only time that's ever kind of happened is for Bitcoin up here, but this wasn't a macro high, right? I mean, this wasn't a second bull market high. This was the end of the bull market going up to set a macro double top for the actual bull market itself before entering into a bear market, right? It's not often in bull markets you just see a double top form and it never goes to a new high, right? And so in my opinion, considering, considering that, what I would go ahead and say is what Solana usually does, it goes for that 1.272 Fibonacci extension if it is capable of breaking that 786 layer at $123, and then of course eventually breaking that all-time high at $260. Under these two circumstances, the door is then open for a $669 move to the, I would almost say minimum, right? If we go into a real bull market, I would say minimum 669 seems likely. Maximum $230, $2,230. I know that sounds absurd. I know that sounds crazy, but you have to understand, if we see a Bitcoin $150, $170, $180,000, there is a possibility for a third place Solana, right? Maybe right behind Ethereum or right around Ethereum's market cap that looks like $2,200. I know people don't want to hear it, but that is the possibility here because of the usage of Solana, right? We have been talking about this shit for months and months and months. I don't mean to rub it in people's faces, but understand this. When Solana was at $30, $20, $15, we were saying, look, Solana is so much better now than it was back in 2021. Back in 2021, it was kind of shit, right? We saw these stoppages and slowdowns and hacks and obviously the manipulation. It was ridiculous, right? But now we've seen a lot of that cleared up. We've seen the token supply being distributed a little bit more fairly, right? All of these things have allowed Solana to get into this position. And I believe the cryptos that work the hardest in situations like they were in the bear market and the bad times, are the ones that flourished the most during the bull markets, and not many have put themselves in a better foundational perspective or a foundational standpoint than Solana, right? I mean, there's a couple examples, right? There's like Polkadot, I guess, is a good example because obviously they were in a pretty bad bear market as well. Obviously, they came back down to some of these lows in which they had not really ever seen before, except for prior to 2021. But even in times like that, they were building, they were developing. And as we announced in HG Access this morning, if we just go over to altcoins, what you can see here is that they are also now starting to spend money on marketing. We've been reached out to as an agency from a ton of DAOs on the Polkadot ecosystem looking to make proposals to start spending money for YouTubers to get DOT on the mainstream media. I now saw that on HG Access. You can feel free to pause this and go read that. Do remember HG Access is launching tomorrow. We're going to change crypto forever. But things like that, right? Those type of things are what fuel rallies that absolutely smash previous all-time highs. That's why DOT's another example of a crypto I'm now buying. This is not sponsored. By the way, I'm just giving you a narrative plate, you're welcome, of what I'm looking for, okay? And so a company like Solana breaking up towards that all-time high is believable, it's possible, and it's achievable. And at this given point, the only thing that stands in our way is first now clearing that $123 party pooper level at the 786 Fibonacci retracement, okay? So at this given point, if you guys do see us break above 123, do understand that we just need to hold a little bit of support. If we hold a little bit of support, I do think this rally can continue up. Obviously, it is not going to do this. It is not going to be straight up. I genuinely do not believe that to be the case. There will be a point in time in which we again do return back to that 20 simple moving average. We will almost always have to back test support at some given point. So do understand, again, there will be time. You don't have to rush. You don't have to FOMO right now, at least in my opinion. Although it very well could continue to the upside, there will be moments where it has to slow down. But the long-term objective here is to get it up towards 669 and possibly to the upper $2,000 plus. Okay, and so with that in mind, I will continue to update you as this does play out. Do remember, all of these posts, all of these things that we're doing, we're building up, we're getting our portfolios ready for what easily could be one of the biggest bull markets in history as a result of institutional investment meeting retail investment in a space that is still developing. That creates opportunity. Okay, so we'll continue to update you here. As I mentioned before, HG Access is launching tomorrow, which is going to change the way you receive information from behind the scenes in crypto forever. Okay, literally forever. So make sure you're ready for that announcement video tomorrow, and I will see you all next time. Peace out, everybody.